Bitcoin bounced nicely this weekend, but on low volume, and we're still ranging sideways as Ethereum starts to outperform Bitcoin, as I discussed was very likely last week. But none of that is the real story of what's going on because the fundamentals in the industry are growing and everything is still macro bullish. I'm going to tell you why I think that and take a look at the Bitcoin and Ethereum charts now. Let's go. What's up, everybody? I'm Scott Melker, also known as the Wolf of All Streets. Before we get started, please subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, the thumbs up right down below. Now, we're going to take a look first at the Bitcoin chart, then the Ethereum chart as discussed, and then all of the news that's very, very bullish for the industry long term. First, I want to take a look at the weekly chart here. I've drawn Fibonacci levels from the lows of March 2020, around 3,800, all the way up to the top just below 65,000. As you can see, we now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 consecutive candles that have closed above the 50% retracement level. The 50% level, known as the Dow level, is not a Fibonacci level, but is commonly used by traders since the beginning of trading as an area to watch for a bounce and where a lot of algorithms and traders place their orders. Very interesting to see that it's held that level at 34,378 for 6 candles in a row. And this is a beautiful bullish hammer that just closed last night. You would expect price action to continue up after that. But again, it's a weekly chart. Very hard to trade the candles because they take so long to play out and you need to see confirmation. So we need to see a green candle. Also, you can see that the 50 MA on the weekly was finally tested by last week's candle right here around 30,317. Price ultimately dropped below 29,000 last week, but as you can see, bounced hard. So it'll be interesting to see what the weekly has in store for us. But right now we have a nice bounce in the proper area and a beautiful hammer candle that should theoretically lead to more price appreciation. Now, digging into the daily, nothing has really changed on this chart dramatically. As you can see on the drop, as I discussed, we have a descending channel. It's perfect, up, down, up, down. Still, price is closed above this blue support on every single daily candle, which is surprising. That was the bottom of a symmetrical triangle that we had that lined up at the top of this. And you can see that price is trying to flip the EQ of this descending channel right here to support. It failed here, went all the way down, made a higher low though. And now we have this situation right here. We want to see it hold this EQ, the dashed line, that's the center of that channel, and head then to the top of the channel. You can expect the 50 MA to be very strong resistance. Top of the channel would be resistance. And ultimately, I'll keep saying it as I have been for probably 5 or 6 weeks now, 42,000 is what matters. We got to get above that line. Now, digging into the 4-hour chart, you can see that price once again tested the range lows almost to the penny here at 30,064 after sweeping them last week. It's encouraging to see that held, and price has continued up, but right back to resistance. People were very bearish at support, as they've been this whole time, and bullish at resistance. Very clear that since we've been ranging, you can effectively just short any resistance and long any support, and it goes very well because people seem to be counter trading rational thought. But here we go. We came into resistance once again, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens here. Ultimately, the EQ of this channel around 36,000 is the short-term line that we need to break, right? We got to get above 36, then we can start talking about 42 and these prices much higher. But as you can see, this is absolutely non-existent volume that everything is trading on, which is not really that encouraging. This line at 31,107, which was this swing low, it broke on the 4-hour after holding here with candles closing below. But as you can see here, if you zoom out on the daily has had 1, 2, 3 bullish SFPs through that line. That means there's still a lot of liquidity down there being engineered and being found every time price drops into that area. Now, looking at the line chart with RSI, as you can see, and I discussed, we had massive bullish divergence coming out of oversold once again. That was your signal to go long here. It was on multiple time frames, pretty much everywhere, including the daily. Well, now on the lower time frames, not the daily, we have hidden bearish divergence, exaggerated hidden bearish divergence almost, which would mean that we have the same high in price. But you can see there's a slightly lower high in price, so this is actually just hidden bearish divergence and a higher high here on RSI. That's on multiple time frames, so we're going to want to see some hidden bullish divergence or bullish divergence to signal that we're going to head further up. That said, this should go to overbought after traveling to oversold. Oversold, overbought, oversold, should go back to overbought. Doesn't always do that, but theoretically it should. So we want to see make a slightly higher high here on price and invalidate these hidden bearish divergences. Now, interestingly, a lot of people have been talking about this is shorts on Bitfinex. We had them piling up as price dropped last week down below the range lows and then they closed, well, they piled up again a couple days ago and now have been closing once again. Somebody seems to know exactly what's going on here, even though the heaviest volume is not on Bitfinex, so these are not representative shorts over the entire market. There is some whale that clearly knows what's going on and has been opening and closing shorts at the perfect times. Now let's dig into the Ethereum chart, because I kind of looked at this last week, tweeted about it, and said, hey man, we're at the range lows here. This looks like a really good shot at a position with a high risk reward. Meaning, it's very easy to cut bait with this at a small loss as a trade. You had the range high, low, right? We've never made it back. And then you had the first retest right here of the range low with a slight SFP. And now you've done that again right over here, right? Holding the range lows and moving up. So this was the trade, basically a stop loss down here in case there's a wick and, it sweeps the lows, maybe even a little lower. And your upside is the target here. So about a 7.88 risk reward ratio targeting the EQ. If you head to the top, that becomes much higher, right? Becomes roughly a 17.68 risk reward. So I love Ethereum versus Bitcoin here. Even if you think it's going to go down, the risk reward, the upside is so disproportionate that it's a trade worth taking. Also seeing slightly increasing volume on this move. So I would be targeting the EQ of that channel. Now on Ethereum USD, very similar, and also had bullish divergence, as I discussed and called last week when it was happening. Sweep of the lows, another sweep of the lows. Tons of liquidity down here. Whoever's pushing price down, finding liquidity, you would be targeting 2277 on this move, in theory, assuming we get back to the EQ. And then, of course, these highs around 3,000, the highs of this range if it continues. I really like Ethereum here because the risk reward is good. Sometimes you take a trade that has a good chance of stopping out because the disproportionate upside justifies it. Now let's dig into the news for the day. Bitcoin will go all the way to 160,000 this year, says Celsius CEO. My friend Alex Mashinsky says that the Bitcoin highs are yet to be seen this year. I agree. Most people seem to agree. Maybe we're being overly bullish, but this seems like normal corrective price action. Here's what he said. When you go too high too fast, you're bound for a correction. You can see my tweets in both March and February saying we're going to have a crash, we're going to have a correction. I predicted 30,000. Bitcoin is like a spring. We stretch it too much and we put too much leverage. Too many people got greedy. I think that the data supports this, that generally we've only seen a sell-off of retail, greedy speculators, and liquidations of leverage trading. Next, Billionaire vows to spearhead Mexico's first Bitcoin-friendly bank. The newest billionaire, the third richest man in Mexico to come onto the scene supporting Bitcoin, is Ricardo Salinas Pliego, and he wants his bank to be the first in Mexico to accept Bitcoin. Now, he's already said that he should have at least 10% of his assets in Bitcoin, which is massively huge. But then to start talking about getting his bank to custody and transacting the asset is a whole new thing. He says he's revealing plans to open the first Bitcoin accepting bank in the country of Mexico. On June 27th, the Mexican billionaire tweeted his support for the widespread adoption of Bitcoin, noting that his bank is working to become the first in Mexico to accept the world's leading digital asset. Absolutely huge if we saw Mexican banks starting to take Bitcoin, and more billionaires in South, Central, and North America looking to gain exposure to Bitcoin as a hedge against bad acting of central banks and inflation. Bitcoin's short-term setup is challenging, JP Morgan strategist warns. Now, listen, we always take everything from JP Morgan with a grain of salt, but I think it's fair to say that they noticed what we did, which is that we have extremely low volume, a lot of underwater positions ahead that people are probably trying to exit. So there's a lot of headwinds for Bitcoin right now. Low volume bouncing through a range. So yeah, we need to see some very strong movement above, I would say, 42,000 to really start talking about a reversal. But let's talk about the industry as a whole. As I mentioned in the intro, venture capital makes a record $17 billion bet on crypto world. VC funds already eclipsed annual amount for crypto investments. 10 billion bullish global raise, largest in industry history. You can see the chart right here of venture capital investment in each year. Last year in 2020, only 5.5 billion. This year already at 17.2 billion, and it's only June. The smart money is investing in the crypto space. This doesn't mean buying Bitcoin. This is the picks and shovels approach. They're investing in the companies, in the exchanges, in everything that's being built in the industry and on the blockchain. So it's very clear here that the big money wants in on crypto. Next, crypto firms fight for top talent with hundreds of openings. Yet again, there's too many job openings and not enough talent because there's such a flood into the industry. There's so many jobs available that need people to fill them. Digital firms try to meet hiring needs in the nascent industry. Talent pools vary by location and pay needs to be competitive. Booming cryptocurrency firms say they're struggling to find the right candidates to fill hundreds of positions as a frenzy of interest in digital currencies and other assets pits them against some of the world's biggest financial institutions. This is very bullish for the space. People are hiring, people are spending money. These are big institutions and also businesses in the crypto space, all looking to hire. So go get a job. If you don't have a job, go get a job. And now perhaps my favorite news of the day, Jay-Z to auction Reasonable Doubt NFT at Sotheby's. The news comes fresh on the heels of a lawsuit filed against another Rockefeller founder over an attempted NFT. Dame Dash was apparently trying to make NFTs of Reasonable Doubt. Jay-Z said, "No, sir, you only own 1/3 of Rockefeller Records alongside myself and Biggs, and you do not have the right to do that." And now Jay-Z is making his own NFT of the Reasonable Doubt cover, which will be sold at Sotheby's. I actually had a consulting gig marketing in the early 2000s where I worked with all of them at Rockefeller Records. I was in the room actually when Kanye West did the art for the College Dropout album. Pretty incredible time in my life. So I interacted with all of these guys and had some pretty crazy experiences. Very sad to see how they've all fallen apart and what's going on there. But Jay-Z basically said something to his partners here. There's a very famous lyric from that album that probably applies here. And that's when Jay-Z said, "You ain't seen money in your life. When it comes to this cheese, y'all like 3 blind mice." Told his partners, 3 blind mice, I'm getting this money and you're not. But Reasonable Doubt is arguably one of the top 3 to 5 best rap albums of all time. I certainly think that that's the case. It just turned 25 years old, making me feel like I'm ancient. And it's exciting to see the NFT of the cover being sold at Sotheby's. Guys, that is all. I'll be live streaming today at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Please check out my newsletter down in the description, as well as my sponsor, Femex, everything they've got going on. Until later today, peace.